The sky over the city was quiet. Too quiet. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the first siren shattered the silence. It wasn't a test. It wasn't a false alarm. This was the real thing. People bolted out of their homes. Some grabbed bags. Others grabbed children. Most didn't have time to grab anything at all. Within minutes, the roads jammed with headlights and panic. The city was being evacuated. Not next week. Not tomorrow. Now. On the far side of town, at the edge of Northbridge, one soldier stood motionless. Corporal Rhea Devaney, 28 years old. Not a commander. Not a legend. Just another name in the system. But tonight, her name would be remembered. The bridge stretched across the river like a lifeline. It was the last remaining escape route. And the enemy, well-equipped and advancing fast, was less than 7 miles out. Intelligence said they'd strike at dawn. But the explosions that lit up the night sky suggested otherwise. Rhea had a choice. The same choice every other unit was given. Fall back. Regroup. Let the Air Force take care of what comes. But as she looked around, something felt off. The other bridges were already gone. Blown. Destroyed. Northbridge was the last one standing. And it was wide open. She checked her radio. Static. Then a voice came through, distorted but clear enough. All units, fall back to checkpoint Alpha. Repeat, fall back. She should have turned around. But something inside her didn't let her move. Not forward. Not back. Just still. To the west, the faint glow of flames lit up a block of apartments. One of them looked familiar. A place she and her sister once lived in. A place filled with memories of burnt toast, old books, and late-night music. She thought about her sister now, in a hospital bed across the river, recovering from surgery. One of the hundreds still inside the evacuation zone. Rhea tightened the strap on her vest, then slung the RPG across her shoulder. She was alone. No backup. No command post. Just her, the bridge, and the city behind her. Another explosion thundered in the distance. This one closer. Much closer. The ground beneath her boots trembled slightly. Then headlights. Moving fast. 2 vehicles coming down the old access road. She dropped to a knee, aimed, and waited. But it was a convoy of evacuees. A battered van. A pickup truck. A group of civilians crying, shouting, begging to be let through. She stood, stepped into the road, waved them forward. The drivers barely looked at her, eyes wide with fear. As the vehicles passed, a little boy looked out from the back seat window. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stared at her, like she was the last thing holding the world together. Once they were gone, silence returned. Except now, it felt heavier, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Rhea turned back toward the bridge. Lights flickered on the far side. The enemy was closer than anyone thought, and no one else was coming to help. She keyed her radio again. Still static. For a second, doubt crept in. What was one person supposed to do? One soldier. One rocket. One bridge. It felt impossible. But then she remembered something her father used to say. You can't control what's coming. You can only decide who you'll be when it gets here. She crouched down, unlocked the RPG, and whispered to herself, I'll be the reason this city still wakes up tomorrow. She wasn't supposed to be there. Not on a battlefield. Not crouched on concrete with a loaded rocket launcher and nothing but silence between her and the enemy. Rhea Devaney didn't grow up dreaming of combat. She didn't play war games or watch old war movies. She liked quiet mornings, warm tea, the smell of old paperbacks from the second-hand bookstore near her childhood home. Her world was small and peaceful, until it wasn't. She was 21 when her father passed. Heart failure. No warning. Just one phone call that changed everything. Her sister, Mira, was only 16 at the time. And she was sick. Diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder that came with long hospital stays and longer bills. Ria dropped out of college that same week. She applied to 3 jobs. None paid enough. Then came the recruiter. He talked about benefits, structure, purpose. But Ria only heard one thing: steady income. Enough to keep her sister alive. That was it. No grand ambition. No patriotic speeches. Just necessity. And so she joined. The first 6 months were the hardest. She didn't fit in. Too soft-spoken. Too cautious. She failed her first weapon test. Froze during her first live drill. But she never quit. Quietly, she adapted. By the time she was assigned to Echo Unit, she was solid. Reliable. Never flashy. Never loud. But when things went wrong, people looked to her. Not because she had rank, but because she kept her head. Even so, no one, not even she, imagined this. A lone defense. A bridge no one else would guard. A city depending on one soldier. She checked her watch. 3:01 a.m. The lights across the river blinked again. Movement. But it wasn't enemy troops. Not yet. Just shadows. Maybe scouts. Maybe something worse. She adjusted her position. Her knees ached from the concrete. Her shoulder throbbed from carrying the launcher. But she didn't move. Behind her, the faint sound of sirens echoed. Still evacuating. That meant civilians were alive. Still inside the danger zone. Still depending on the bridge. Still depending on her. She thought of Mira. Just hours ago, she'd received a text. Short. Simple. Surgery went well. I'm okay. Love you. Ria hadn't replied. Not yet. There hadn't been time. Now she wondered if there'd ever be time again. She took a deep breath. Exhaled slowly. In training, they taught her how to read terrain, how to measure distance, how to fire under pressure. But no one taught her how to hold a city together with nothing but willpower and an empty radio. 3:04. A rumble. This time, not thunder. Not an airstrike. Wheels. Engine noise. They were coming. She shifted forward. Rested her elbow on her knee. Finger near the trigger. Then headlights. Too low to be military. She hesitated. A lone motorcycle zipped onto the bridge. Civilian. A young man. Maybe early 20s. Helmet, backpack, and a terrified look on his face. He didn't stop. Didn't slow. Just sped past her like a ghost. Trying to outrun whatever was behind him. As he vanished into the city, Ria returned her gaze to the far side of the bridge. Now she saw them. 3 trucks. Unmarked. Armored. Not ours. They were slow. Testing the road. Testing her. She knew what they were doing. They thought no one would fire. They thought the bridge was abandoned. They were wrong. She pressed her eye to the scope, lined up the lead truck, and whispered the same words again. I'll be the reason this city still wakes up tomorrow. The trucks moved slowly, cautiously, like they weren't sure what they were driving into. That was their mistake. They thought the bridge was unguarded, that everyone had fled, that this city had already surrendered. Ria held her breath, adjusted her aim. Her finger hovered near the trigger. 1 shot. That's all she'd get. The lead vehicle had a reinforced front. Not bulletproof, but it would take a direct hit to stop it. She waited. Closer. Closer. 50 meters now. 45. Then, fire. The rocket launched with a roar that shattered the stillness. In less than 2 seconds, it struck the front truck dead on. A blast of flame and debris exploded into the air. The vehicle flipped onto its side, skidding into the guardrail. The other two trucks slammed on their brakes. Smoke poured out across the bridge. The enemy didn't return fire. Not yet. They weren't expecting resistance. And they definitely weren't expecting just one soldier. Rhea ducked behind a barrier. She reached for her second rocket. Only two left. She loaded it with practiced hands. Her heart pounded, but her grip was steady. This wasn't about fear. It was about time. Buying time. She glanced behind her. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. Not with peace. With fire. Airstrikes lit the sky like lightning. But people were still inside. She knew it. Elderly who couldn't run. Children who didn't understand. Patients in hospital beds. People who just didn't make it out in time. If the enemy crossed this bridge, they'd trap everyone left behind. She couldn't let that happen. Her radio hissed. Then, finally, a voice. Echo unit, report. Do we have a line on North Bridge? She grabbed the mic. This is Devaney. I'm still here. North Bridge is engaged. A pause. Then disbelief. You're alone. She didn't answer. Another voice cut in. Hold position. Reinforcements rerouted. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes. She looked down at her watch. It had only been 9 minutes since the first shot. She had to survive 31 more. The second truck began to move again. This one was smarter. It backed up, trying to swing wide, stay out of her line of sight. She knew that trick. She waited. A shadow moved behind the smoke. She fired again. The second rocket arced through the air and disappeared into the fog. A second explosion. Not as loud, but followed by screaming metal. Another vehicle disabled. The third truck didn't move. It just sat there. Then it opened fire. Bullets tore across the bridge. Stone chipped near her head. She dropped, rolled to her left, and crawled behind a concrete pillar. She was out of rockets now. Only a sidearm remained. She opened her pouch and checked her last magazine. 7 rounds. The gun felt like a toy now. A whisper against thunder. But she wasn't planning to give up the bridge. Not yet. The shooting stopped. Silence again. Too quiet. She listened. Footsteps. At least 2. Maybe 3. Light. Moving fast. They weren't sending vehicles now. They were sending people. She steadied her breathing. Took position behind the far column. She couldn't let them cross. Not because she had something to prove, but because this wasn't just a crossing. It was a gate. Behind her, an entire city was still trying to escape. She would be the lock, the shield, and, if necessary, the sacrifice. The footsteps grew louder, closer, boots against concrete. Rushed, uncertain. They weren't expecting resistance, but now they knew someone was here, armed, dangerous, and hidden. Rhea stayed low, pressed her back against the cold pillar. She held the pistol tight, her knuckles white around the grip. The bridge was wide, but the support beams created narrow choke points. She knew this layout better than they did. She knew where the steel created echoes, where footsteps bounced off concrete the loudest, where shadows swallowed everything. 2 figures appeared in the smoke. Silhouettes. One moved right, the other straight ahead. No words, no signals, just a slow, creeping advance. She aimed at the closer one, fired. 1 shot. It landed. The figure dropped instantly. The second one spun toward the sound, firing blind into the haze. Rhea rolled left, staying behind the barrier. Shards of concrete flew as bullets struck inches from her head. She didn't panic. She waited. He stopped shooting. Footsteps again, trying to flank. She raised the pistol, aimed slightly ahead of the noise. Fired twice. Then silence. She waited. 10 seconds. 15. No movement. Then she heard it, more boots. More than before. They were sending in a squad. She slid back behind the main barrier, breathing hard now. Not from fear. From the weight of it all. Her arm stung. Her shoulder ached from the RPG recoil. Her fingers were trembling now, not with nerves, but with fatigue. She checked the mag. 4 rounds left. Not enough. She reached into her pouch. A smoke grenade. 1 left. She pulled the pin, tossed it forward. The hiss filled the air as thick white smoke bloomed across the bridge. If they couldn't see her, they'd hesitate. That's all she needed. Hesitation. Behind her, more headlights appeared on the horizon. But not enemy trucks. Civilian buses. Packed. Moving fast. The final convoy. She blinked twice, forcing herself to stay focused. They were coming through now, because she held the bridge. That convoy couldn't turn around. Couldn't wait. Couldn't slow. If the enemy broke through, the buses wouldn't stand a chance. She adjusted her position again, moved behind the last support column at the center of the bridge. From here, she had one last line of sight to the far side. The enemy was regrouping. She could hear orders shouted now. A different voice. Commanding. Sharp. They were preparing for a push. She had 4 bullets, no rockets, and no time. Then the radio buzzed again. Devani, do you copy? She answered immediately. Still here. You've got air support incoming. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. She looked at the convoy again. The lead bus was almost on the bridge. They didn't know what waited on the other side. They were driving straight into it. She couldn't hold for 12 minutes. Not with a pistol. Not alone. But maybe she didn't have to win. Just delay. She opened her vest, pulled out a flare, and slammed it against the concrete. Red light burst upward. A signal. To the drivers. To anyone watching. Stop. The buses slowed. The second one veered slightly, barely avoiding the guardrail. They were watching her now, trusting her. Rhea turned back toward the smoke, then stood, out in the open. She fired once, then again. They returned fire instantly. The air exploded with sound and heat. She dove forward, rolling behind the next column. Her shoulder burned. Blood. But she was still conscious. Still alive. Still standing between the city and the fire. The pain in her shoulder was unbearable. A hot, sharp sting that spread with every heartbeat. Blood seeped through her uniform. A dark stain blossoming across her chest. But she refused to collapse. The bridge wasn't just steel and concrete beneath her feet. It was the last barrier between survival and destruction for everyone left behind. The enemy soldiers regrouped beyond the smoke, their voices urgent, but cautious now. They had learned she was not just a ghost on the bridge. She was a force, a sentinel who refused to yield. Every second she bought mattered. Every moment she held the line meant lives saved. Rhea steadied her breathing and scanned the shadowy expanse. Her pistol was nearly empty. 3 bullets left. She glanced toward the convoy, now inching forward slowly across the bridge. The drivers' faces were tense, their eyes flickering between the burning city behind them and the dangerous gap ahead. The enemy was preparing to push again, and this time it wouldn't be just a few soldiers. She could hear the pounding of heavy boots, more reinforcements arriving, moving carefully, methodically, closing in. She moved as quietly as she could to the next pillar, pain burning with every step. The thick smoke cloud was thinning. She had only moments before they spotted her again. Then she saw them, a squad of 6, approaching from the far side, weapons trained on her last known position. No time to aim. She fired twice, hitting 2 before they could react. The others scattered, firing wildly, bullets ricocheting off the metal railings. Rhea dove behind a concrete block, heart hammering, sweat mixing with blood on her skin. She was alone, badly wounded, and outnumbered. But surrender was not an option. She reached into her pocket, fingers trembling, and pulled out the last grenade. Her mind raced. She could hold this position or deny the bridge to the enemy with a single, desperate act. The convoy was almost across. She whispered to herself, for Mira, for the city. She pulled the pin and rolled the grenade toward the advancing squad. The explosion shattered the night, sending shockwaves through the air and a plume of fire and smoke into the sky. When the dust settled, the attackers lay sprawled, groaning or silent. Her radio buzzed again. Devani, this is command. Air support is 5 minutes out. Hold your position. 5 minutes. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Rhea forced herself upright, staggering but determined. Blood blurred her vision, but she focused on the approaching enemy. Suddenly, the sky erupted with a roar of jet engines. Searchlights pierced the darkness, and missiles streaked downward, smashing into enemy formations on the far side of the bridge. The bridge shook with the force of explosions, and the remaining enemy troops scattered, some fleeing, others dropping to their knees in surrender. Rhea lowered her pistol, exhausted but alive. Behind her, the convoy finally reached safety. She allowed herself a brief moment to close her eyes and breathe. Tonight, the city had not burned, because she had stood alone. The roar of the jets faded, replaced by a heavy silence that felt almost unreal. The bridge trembled beneath Rhea's feet, still echoing from the explosions that had shattered the night. Smoke curled upward, mixing with the cold air, obscuring the burning horizon behind her. For a moment, she simply stood there, breath ragged, heart pounding, disbelief washing over her like a wave. She had done it. She had held the bridge. But the cost was clear. Blood coated her uniform. Her shoulder throbbed with a relentless ache that made each breath sharp and shallow. Her legs trembled, barely able to carry her weight, yet she refused to fall. Not now. Behind her, the convoy disappeared into the city's outskirts, safe at last. Mothers clutching children, elderly trembling with relief. Strangers united by hope and fear. They owed her their lives. Rhea's radio crackled, and a voice came through, calm but urgent. Corporal Devani, this is Lieutenant Harris. Reinforcements are inbound. Hold tight, medics on the way. She managed a weak nod, though no one could see it. Her fingers tightened around the pistol, the last shred of her strength grounding her in the moment. Minutes passed like hours. Then the sound of footsteps, steady, purposeful. Shadows emerged through the smoke. Soldiers. Not enemy troops. Allies. Faces grim, eyes scanning for danger. But relief softened their expressions when they saw her. A medic rushed forward, kneeling beside her, pressing a cloth to her wound. Hang in there, the medic whispered, voice steady despite the chaos. Help's coming. Rhea's mind drifted. She thought of Mira, the sister she'd left behind in the hospital, fighting a different battle. A battle that seemed small compared to this, yet just as vital. She clung to that thought like a lifeline. The lieutenant crouched beside her. You held them off alone? Against a whole squad. Rhea managed a tired smile. Had to. There was no one else. He shook his head in disbelief. You saved this city tonight. Pain blossomed across her body as the medic worked, but Rhea's spirit didn't falter. Somewhere in the distance, the first hints of dawn bled into the sky. Pale light stretched across the horizon, casting long shadows over the battered bridge. The city was still standing. She had made sure of that. And as the sun rose, casting golden light over twisted steel and smoldering rubble, Rhea allowed herself to close her eyes. Not in defeat, but in quiet victory. Because tonight, one soldier had held back a storm. And that was enough. Rhea opened her eyes slowly, the morning light filtering through the haze of smoke and dust. The pain in her shoulder pulsed relentlessly, but she was alive. Around her, the bridge lay scarred, twisted metal, cracked concrete, and the lingering scent of gunpowder mixed with smoke. Yet it stood. The city, beyond the bridge, was waking. Distant sirens wailed, people shouting, footsteps echoing through streets that were scarred but still breathing. The buses she had held the bridge for had passed safely into the heart of the city, carrying families away from the destruction and closer to hope. A hand rested gently on her shoulder. She looked up to see Lieutenant Harris, his eyes heavy but filled with respect. "They're clearing the area," he said quietly. "Reinforcements have secured the bridge. Evac teams are coming for you." Rhea nodded, managing a small smile despite the exhaustion gripping her body. "They asked for a hero," she whispered. "But I was just doing what anyone would do." He shook his head firmly. "No. What you did, it saved lives. The city would have fallen without you." She let the words settle, but couldn't ignore the memories flickering behind her eyes. The flash of explosions, the sharp crack of gunfire, the weight of loneliness in that endless night. A medic approached, carefully helping her to her feet. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through her shoulder, but she kept standing. She had to. As they moved away from the bridge, Rhea caught sight of the ruins below. Fires still burned here and there, but the destruction wasn't total. The city had survived. Because she had survived. Her mind drifted to Mira again. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. One message glowed on the screen. "Surgery went well. I'm okay. Love you." Rhea smiled, a warmth flooding her chest. She typed back simply, "Hold on. I'm coming." The path ahead was uncertain, filled with hardship and sacrifice. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She had stood alone when it mattered most. And now, she would fight to rebuild what had almost been lost. Because heroes aren't born in safety. They're made in moments like this, when the world is dark and all you have is the courage to stand and say, "Not today." The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over a city scarred but unbroken. Rhea sat quietly on the edge of an ambulance, her shoulder bandaged and aching, but her spirit unyielding. Around her, the sounds of recovery filled the air, engineers clearing debris, medics tending to the wounded, and voices of survivors sharing stories of loss and hope. She watched as the bridge she had defended stood strong despite the damage, a symbol of resilience. It wasn't just steel and concrete anymore. It was a testament to one woman's courage when the city needed her most. Her thoughts drifted back to the night, the fear, the solitude, the endless battle. But most of all, she remembered why she had stayed. Not for glory or recognition, but for the faces of those she had saved. The mother clutching her child on the bus, the elderly man who'd whispered a prayer as they crossed, the young soldier she had never met but whose life depended on her stand. A voice interrupted her reverie. Lieutenant Harris approached, a rare softness in his eyes. "They're naming the bridge after you," he said. "It's more than just a crossing now, it's a legacy." Rhea shook her head, the weight of what she'd done still settling in. "I was just one soldier," she replied quietly. "Anyone could have done it. But they didn't," he said firmly. "You did. Alone." She looked out over the city, the rising sun painting the skyline in gold and orange hues. The fires of war still smoldered in places, but hope was stronger. People were returning, rebuilding, living. She thought of Mira again, her sister, her anchor, and felt a quiet determination grow. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, But she was ready. For now, she would rest, heal, and remember the night she stood alone when a city could have burned, but didn't. Because sometimes the strongest battles are fought not with armies, but with a single unwavering heart.